All right, let's go back to our typical 909 hi-hats. I'll just leave the other ones inside the project for you if you want to make something of it. And add some shakers. Because now we just filled up the gaps in between, but we want a lot more movement. We want it to be a lot more alive. And there's also different ways you can go about shakers. I like to combine those ways. One way would be to just throw a shaker on a MIDI clip. Then once again, Command-Shift-M, we create our clip, and we want this to be on every 16th note. Bring down the velocity. Now this sounds very mechanical. So let's make the sample a little bit shorter. And a great way to add more live to your track is to play with the Groove Pool of Ableton, which I do all the time. It has some very classical swing types in there. They're taken from old drum machines, if you have the right packs, for example, from the MPC 3000, very popular drum machine. So let's just open our Groove Pool right here. And I like to just throw in a few types of swings that I might be using. 54 is quite subtle. 57 is already a bit noticeable. And 60 is a fair amount of swing. And if you want it to be really swingy, you can even go above 60. So I just throw in 61, 57, 64, so I can kind of choose when I'm making my track. Go back to our MIDI loop, and now we can select the grooves that we threw into the Groove Pool. Let's go for the 57. And it's already much more alive. Also, it doesn't just change the rhythm, the Groove Pool also changes the velocity of the samples a little bit, so it feels more humanized, and you don't have to go in and change the volume individually. I mean, you can do that, do whatever feels right, but for the sake of saving time, I just prefer using the Groove Pools most of the time. So now we have one type of shaker, which is just with 16th notes, so it feels alive the way we processed it a little bit, but of course you can also go in and just use a real shaker, or you can just go in and record something. If you have, I don't know, a box of chewing gum laying around, record a little of your own shaker, or most sample packs, or if you just start a simple Google search, you're going to find some recordings of real shakers online very easily. So you can just use a recording of a shaker. Maybe layer those on top. And then you could go in and also change the character of this one. What I tend to do is I just go into the loop and also play a little bit with the transient settings. Maybe shorten this a little bit, play with the pitch. So I make it a little bit more my own. And now the third way, which I like to introduce, is using white noise from a synthesizer. Most plugins are going to have a white noise option, and also Ableton's operator has one. So let's just go for the operator. Once you've understood how a synthesizer works, you can basically use any, and you're going to feel at home. Basically what it does is it has oscillators, which are just sound generating units, and in any synthesizer you can choose a waveform, and you don't have to know much about how the electric current flows, but just remember how some waveforms have a distinct sound, and one of those typical waveforms is the noise waveform, and this one just sounds like a hiss. So if we go in here in the operator to the wave setting, right now it's a sine wave, change it to the noise. Now also add in some 16th notes. We already did this with this shaker, so I'm just going to copy this, paste it. Now it's still just producing one long note of white noise, so we have to change the envelope of the operator so it doesn't play through, but the tone or the note just gets quieter once it's played. So let's do this. Now we already got a little bit of movement. We can give it a little bit of wideness by using spread. Make this even more. Maybe turn up the attack so it feels a little bit more shaky. Or maybe not. Bring down the volume. And now add an equalizer, and we can see almost the whole band is taking up. We see there's a little bit of frequencies missing at the top, so let's open the filter envelope right here. Cut out some of the lows, turn on the high pass filter. Like so. And now to give it some movement, let's use our auto filter, which has this LFO option, which you can turn on right here. Turn up the amount, and what this is going to do is just going to move the frequency in the rate that you tell it to. You can't see it, it's not visualized, but it still does it. So let's turn the rate to a certain increment of notes. Let's go for it repeating the cycle every 4 beats. Maybe every second beat, and maybe not as much. Maybe reduce the, or maybe turn up the attack still a little bit. Maybe change the shape even, let's see what happens. Now it's a little bit random, and there we have a little bit of movement, and we just mix this in very lightly in the back. Mix this in the back. We can also push some to the sides, the ones that are more mono, push them to the side a little bit. And now we have our shakers. Let's have a listen.